converting, importing labels from TAGGIT Pro 8.6 to 12, setting up the work environment in TAGGIT, label setup options. We do a general overview of the database manager and go over some printing options and types. So with converting labels, here are some important things that we want to remember. We want to remember the first thing we're going to do is we're going to back up all your labels and associated data files to a separate device. And that's just so if you need to go back, you have that stuff. You also want to make sure you have time for the conversion. Depending on the amount of time or the amount of labels you have, it can take some time. And if you've got thousands of labels, then it's not going to be 20 minutes. Next step is to make sure you're going to complete the conversion setup process before you do the conversion. And that process involves making sure you have everything linked so that when the actual converter starts to convert, it knows where everything is. And then the last thing is a lot of people ask is each label has to be approved. There's no batch approval. You have to go through each individual label and approve it. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to go ahead and open up TAGGIT 12 and I'm going to go ahead and open up the label converter and show you how that process with about 6 different labels. So the first thing you do is go to your Start menu and find SADO, not Oracle. We're going to click on the TAGGIT 8 label converter, and that's going to come up. And here's where you're going to tell it where you're going to find the files, your old 8.6 files. So we're going to leave it there because we haven't changed our default folder, so we're going to let it scan that folder for us. And it's going to scan, and I can see it found 540 labels in my old TAGGIT 8. Now I don't want to do all those today, so I'm just going to go through and deselect the ones that I don't want to use. And so that leaves me with these right here. And I'm not going to do all these either. I just want to do something real quick so you can see how it works. Okay, so I've got about 6 different labels selected there. And so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to show it where we want the labels to go. Once they're saved, do we want to go to the TAGGIT Pro folder, or do we want to specify where that folder's at? If you click this option here, it saves the labels in the original folder, the one that you're pulling them out of. It'll save it right back in that folder. Some people you can do that. I wouldn't recommend it. It's better to go ahead and save it in the TAGGIT Pro 12 folder. That way you have some separation there. You know you've got one folder for TAGGIT 8.6 and one for 12. Or you can browse and put it in the folder that you want it in. The default folder for TAGGIT is going to be in Users, Public, Documents, SADO, TAGGIT 12, and yeah, we have to drill down a little bit, but that's where they're going to go. So that's my path. And so now we're going to come to an option where we can specify all our different options. Linked files. This is where you're going to tell TAGGIT 12 where your serial files are, your pick list files are, all the pictures that you used previously, your text files, databases, everything. I'm going to leave it as a default because nothing has really changed for me. So I'm going to leave that. And when I click processing, it's going to go through and start converting those labels. Okay, and as you can see there across the top here, you actually have, it'll show you errors, warnings. A warning is a minor error. It's something like different font was used because they couldn't find the font or something like that. A hard error is going to keep you from being able to convert the label. You're going to have to find that information. And then, of course, there's successes. So what we're going to do here is we're going to look and we're going to see what's keeping these labels from doing that. And we see that this by default was created for a different printer. So it doesn't find that printer, so it's giving me an error. We don't really care about that because we're not using that printer. And then we can look through this one and find that it's missing a paragraph. Paragraph's not in, the way it was in 8.6 is not in TAGGIT 12 anymore, so we're not going to use that. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the preview and approve process. One other thing to remember when you're converting labels, if you don't install TAGGIT 12 on a computer that already has 8.6 on it, when you go to convert your labels, you won't get a preview of the original label. You'll get a new preview, but you won't get the old original. This one here, you won't get that. So best practice is to make sure it's on a computer that has 8.6. You don't have to, but it's just a good thing to do. So we're just going to go through the labels, and like I said, you have to approve each one of them. And like you notice, the way variables are viewed in TAGGIT 12 is a little bit different. So you don't see the variable information here. You have ABC on 8.6, and 12 you don't see that until you actually go into the program and tell it, you know, I want to see data or I want to see X's or whatever. Okay, so now that we've approved all the labels, you see the approve button is no longer highlighted, and so we're done converting the labels, and we can use them in TAGGIT 12 now. So I'm going to go ahead and come out of that. And so the next thing we're going to do after we have converted labels, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to open up TAGGIT. We're going to add our printer. We're going to set up our label and settings, and then I can also show you how to customize the toolbar a little bit. I know we had some people that mentioned that the icons were too small. We can't really do a whole lot about the icons, but the size of the print that are associated with those icons, you can change those and increase the size there to make it a little bit more readable. Okay, so the first thing you do, TAGGIT by default, all drivers and everything are downloaded and installed with the software. You don't have to download any external drivers. It comes with the software. So to use the TAGGIT driver, it's with the software. So we're going to go to File, select Printer, and you notice I've already got a BSX5 already installed here, but I'm just going to show you how to do it. We're just going to go to Add, we're going to add an SX4 because I already have the 5 and I don't want to confuse it a little bit. One thing you're going to want to do is you're going to make sure you uncheck direct access. Direct access, what that does is that puts the spooling control with the software, and it just sends it straight to the printer. So we want to uncheck that because having it unchecked gives us more ability to control what's printed and how much. So now you see the printer here. The icon beside of it indicates that it is the software driver. The software is going to control this. This one right here, you can use this, but this is a Windows driver. So now that we've got that label set up, Label setup can be done from File, Label Setup, and if you notice I've already made a custom label here, just so I knew we were going to be doing some of the horticulture stuff, so I wanted to make sure we had something that you guys recognize. Basically all I did was type the name in here, put my label full size in here, and then I hit save. And then from now on, when I go in here, I've always got that label there that I can just go back and select it if I desire to. Here's where you can change your label size. So if you had like a 2x1, and then you had 2 per row, it's going to show you a preview here, just like in the old software. So put that back. Okay. And that's, that pretty much in a nutshell is how to create your own stock. And you can use the ones we already have in TAGGIT, but you don't get them to them from here. To get to the pre-templates, the preloaded templates, you would go to Open, and you're going to go to SX, and they're 5-inch, and all your label templates are here as far as size are concerned. So as far as label setup, that's pretty much it. If anybody has any questions about that, we can always go back later, and you can send me questions, and I'll be glad to answer them. How to customize your toolbar. Go into Tools, Configuration, and one of the biggest things I think people have been asking for is how to change, the icons. We can't really change those, but we can change where it says New, Open, Save. We can change that font. So this right here is where you do that. And you can make it pretty much anything that you want to make it. We're going to make it Arial. I mean, there are some restrictions because when you make it too big, it's going to start overlapping and stuff. But you can play with that, as you need it, as far as to make it to where you can see it or your customers. We're going to make it back down to 10, and then it should stay that way from now on. One thing I want to point out, if you do fixed text, you come over here, and let's say we want to type test. You right-click on here, you can set as default this size, so then everything that you put on the label is going to be the same size. So that'll stay that way. It'll be the same size, same font for everything that you put on until you change it. Okay. So I'm going to back up just a second, and we're going to go back, and I'm going to show you how I created that stock again, just because I want to make sure you understand how that's done. So I'm just going to create a new label. We're going to call it solid test. And then I'm going to save it. And so now when I go here, I can now select between my two labels. Another thing I wanted to show you before we leave this area is your printer settings. There are some printer settings that are pretty important to make sure that they're set correctly for the type of media that you're using. And that can be found here in your settings. Some people by default, as you see here, it says on. If I were to print like this right here, it's going to flip and rotate the data that's on the label. So we want to turn those off. And then this right here, we want to set that to black market for running slip-on tags or pot stakes. If you're running your adhesive type labels, you're going to select gap or hole 1. And this is assuming that you're using the SX5 printer. Okay, so that takes us through the label setup. Now what I want to do is I want to open up the database manager and just show you how to create a database, how you're going to add tables and fields, and then how to edit that database. One thing to note here, you cannot modify Excel databases through the database manager. You can modify the Access database. So with that, I'm going to show you how to do this. Okay, so when you open your database manager, you notice you've got some things here. You've got a database connections tab, database structure, edit, database, database query, and print. Now, so you can print from the database manager, and you can structure your database, and you can edit it from what's in here. So this tab is going to show you all the connections that we currently have. The database structure is going to show you the structure of the database. So it's going to show you all the different elements, variables that you have on a label. And here is where you're going to edit your database under the Edit Database tab. We're going to create a database, and we're going to call it SARO Test. And see it added it here. And then we're going to go on and we're going to start with our database structure. So the first thing we're going to notice is you have a key here. So anything you check here, which should only be one, is going to be your key field. Your database, the type of field, you have, it's a variable character. We also have currency. We also have a memo field, which this field is a little bit easier to use than the variable character field sometimes. But I'm going to use the variable character field, and we're going to limit that to 10 characters. If I wanted to allow a null here, I could check that, but we don't want to because it's going to be our key field, so it needs to be unique every time. So we're going to go on down, and I'm just going to go ahead and create some of these for you. And notice how here it allows nulls in this variable type. And I'm only going to put a few more in here. Just so we can get a concept of how this is done. So once you're done setting up your database structure, you're going to apply that. And then we're going to go to Edit Database. And here's where you're going to actually start to enter your data. And I'm going to give you just a few records here just so we can be able to show you how things go in TAGGIT. Okay, so now we have a few records here, and so now what we're going to do is we're actually going to go back into the TAGGIT, and we're going to use this database to populate some labels. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Data Sources, Database, and we're going to create or edit a query. So we're going to select our data source. So we're going to look for SATO test. Comes up there. We're going to select the table. This will be table 1. And you notice all of our variables come in, and we can ascend or descend those with this sort button. We can select all, and we can uncheck all. We're going to select all of them, and we're going to say OK. And it's going to ask me, do I want to save the query? Query is just another lookup that's going to make it easier for the database to be pulled from the software. So we're going to name our query SATO test as well. Okay, so now I've got that data source created. I've got that link, if you will, to the label. So now I can start to use that database. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the existing database, and we're just going to start putting our variables on here. And so it really is as easy as drag and drop. Move these, align them however you want to. And I notice right here that I've actually put the genus in my number field. So I want to go back, and we want to edit my database. change that. We're going to go back here. Remove those. And what I'm going to do, since I made changes to my database, is I'm going to run query. And I'm going to go back and I'll select that and I'm going to say open. And so now it should refresh my database. And now I have my updated data that I can use. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to use a barcode. Use existing data source again. We're going to use the number. You can resize this, move it around. And if you notice, I just got the number 25 for my price. What we can do is we can go in here to data source properties and we can go to output. And we can put a prefix to $. We can display decimals with 2. And then now I've got my price here. And then if you've got this toolbar up here, which is by default, you can actually flip through and see the records in your database. If you notice that one is just a little bit bigger, we can move that over and get that all straightened out. Now, if you want to be able to align these things, you're just going to grab all across all of them. You're going to go to Objects, Alignment, and we're going to go to Top. And so now everything should be lined straight across the top. If you want to align to the side, again, we're going to grab the things that we want to align. Objects, Align to the left. And now everything over here is aligned to the left. So now, what we're going to do is we're going to save this label since we've already got it created. We're going to call it SOTO test again. And then we can go back over here. We can go to Print. We go to Settings. On our SOTO test label, set our BSX printer, and then if you notice over here on the right, it gives me a preview of my label, so I can print from here. I can preview what the label is going to look like and print it. If I click on it, it's going to change to that record. So let's say I want to add something here. Then all I'll do is go back to Edit Database, and I can add my number here. And so now the database is edited. It's fairly simple. Of course, you can make it as complicated as you want to. You can add many more fields here. You can set your length here. And that's all by going to File, Create New Database, and select Access. Okay, so now I'm going to go over printing options and types. When you go to print your label, you're going to have 4 different options. You have direct, you have simple, you have searches in database, and database query result. The direct is simply the one where we created your installed your driver, where we uncheck direct access, is pretty much the same thing. So if you select direct, as soon as you hit direct, it's going to just send it to the printer to print, and it's only going to print the one. You don't get a choice to select what you want to print as far as how many. So just to show you that, if I go to direct, I've got it set to file, so it's not going to allow me to print, but it would just go ahead and print. If you click simple, simple is, it's just going to show you the label formats or your variable information in your database, and you can select and see it in the preview. And you can go back here to general, and you can print those one at a time as you need them. As far as searches in database, you can come in here, you can find your database. We're going to select number because that's the number we want to search by. And then you can go here and you can print the current record. And this, again, this is the only way to just be able to pull it up real quick, enter the number you want, and print it. The one that most people are going to use and are probably more aware with and familiar with is the query result. And in here, you can come in here and you can hit 5. Let's say I want 10 of these. And let's say I want 15 of these. All right, so then you should get 5 labels of the Acer, 10 of the Arona, and 15 of the Cyberica. And then we're going to hit print, and it's not allowing me to establish connection because I don't have a printer connected. But then it should come up with another print box and tell you you have a total of all those labels combined. So if you had 5 of one, 10 another, and 15 of another, you're going to get 30 labels. And I think I've pretty much covered everything I set out to cover today. So hopefully I've left roughly about 20 minutes. If anybody has any questions, we can open that back up and let everybody, if you have questions, I can show you some stuff. I'll make sure everybody's unmuted here. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask those questions.